Hi, my name is Awilda Jimenez. I'm a virtual content specialist teacher from PS 386 in the Bronx. I've created this teacher-facing video in partnership with Maria Friedland from the Division of Multilingual Learners. Our goal is to create content to support our multilingual learners and English language learners during remote and blended instruction. This teacher-facing video will focus on the independent practice portion of the Grade 4 Unit 3 Day 15 lesson entitled Protests in Colonial America and Colonial New York. Our focus question is what events led to the war with Great Britain? And our lesson objective is to analyze a variety of sources and explain how the colonists used different forms of protest to make their voices heard. The scaffolds that I focused on for this lesson are using home language as a resource and giving access to grade level texts. Students have already been assigned videos and images to analyze before the lesson. For the independent practice portion, you could choose to assign workbook pages 156 in English as well as their native language. So they have a source text to read, and they could begin to answer some of the questions in preparation for the independent practice. And as they engage with the task during independent practice, they could revise and continue to answer some of these questions. So for independent work, students will be assigned as a class different source texts to analyze. So along with a timeline of events, students have the option of listening to the audio version as a scaffold. They could also read in partnerships if you'd like to help them understand the text. So here's a timeline of events. For our multilingual learners and English language learners, I would recommend focusing on tea parties because they've already seen videos on it and are studying images on the tea parties. So we can highlight this area of the timeline. So these are some images that students were studying along with this video prior to the lesson. I would recommend grouping our multilingual learners and English language learners in groups. So you could assign each group one of the slides. So one group could be focused on understanding the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Tea Party. Another group could study the Princeton, New Jersey Tea Party. And another group could study the New York City Tea Party. And that way they can, while they read, they understand, they summarize what the Tea Party is, like what happened. You could have them answer the 5 W's in each group so that they can present their understanding of what happened. They could use Flipgrid. They can record. They can create a short where they're explaining what happened, and then they could present what happened during each tea party to the rest of the group. So they can come together on a Google Meet and present, and groups can watch each other's shorts so they can get an understanding of what happened during each tea party and why. Students could also, in their workbooks on page 157, once they listen to their classmates explain what happened during each tea party, they can come back to revising the answers to some of these questions, or adding on information to these questions. And they can also make an illustration on page 157 of the Passport to Social Studies workbook. They can illustrate their understanding of what happened once they listen to their peers' presentations or watch it on Flipgrid. They can label their illustrations. And they can use this independent work slide that you can assign on Google Classroom as a note taker. So once they finish listening to or watching the presentations, they can synthesize what they learned by answering what do people do during a tea party, and evaluating whether they think the tea parties were an effective form of protest, why or why not. You could also have the groups create a final video, maybe on Flipgrid, for example, where they synthesize all the information that they've learned from each of the tea parties, and then have them present to the class on their understandings of tea parties. And then the students in your class who are not English language learners or multilingual learners could present on the other topics that were assigned during independent work. So in other words, we could focus, we could assign our Ls and multilingual learners the sources on tea parties, and then other groups in the class can have Liberty Trees and Liberty Poles, and then another group could have works of art, and as a class come together and present. So the work that we're doing with our multilingual learners and English language learners during independent work is pulling them aside in small groups and breaking those small groups up so that one small group is reading and listening to what happened in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Tea Party. And notice that some words have been defined and highlighted. Another group is focusing on Princeton, New Jersey, and another group is focusing on New York. So we're giving students agency, our multilingual learners and English language learners, we're giving them agency in teaching each other, using Flipgrid as a tool to show their understanding of the Tea Party.